Okay.
Hello, welcome to our Manhattan Town Hall Live. This is our Manhattan City Commission Election 2025 series. I'm John Mata, chair of our Manhattan. Our Manhattan is a local political action committee. Uh, I believe we're the only local PAC in Kansas. We've been established since 2010 is when we got started. I'm currently a city commissioner. I've been on, this is my 8th year on the commission, also chair of the law board. My third stint is chair there, former mayor, and I am not running for reelection this year, officially retiring. With me, our producer for our Manhattan, Ed McNamara, will be monitoring the broadcast, and we really encourage you to ask questions. Ed will be monitoring that, and we'll pull those questions in, and we'll give those priority in our broadcast. And of course, the star of the show tonight is Larry Fox. He is a candidate for Manhattan City Commission this year, 2025, and we're going to, and just to some more housekeeping. We actually sent out questions to all the candidates, and we have gotten answers from uh, 5 of them. Those have all been posted online. We actually already did one interview with Scott Seel. Due to some personal issues with me, we're way behind schedule. We do have Jim Morrison scheduled for next Thursday, and then we have Peter Opelt, who answered the questions some time ago, and then Andrew von Lintel, who just got his answers in, and those are posted online. So we're going to try to get those interviews scheduled. We'll give Peter first choice because he got his questions in before Andrew. Uh, but it'll depend on the scheduling which one goes first. We'll just make sure we get Peter accommodated before we do Andrew because we are going in order of those questions answered. So on to tonight's broadcast. We're going to start off with Larry. Larry, can you give us an introduction about yourself and your history in Manhattan or wherever, and also why you're running for city commission?
Very good. Thanks for having me on tonight, John. I appreciate it. So, about myself, I grew up on a farm outside of Larned, Kansas, which is out kind of in western Kansas, middle of the state. I moved to Manhattan in 73 to attend K State. I graduated in 1976 with a BS in finance. Later, I got an MBA in 1985. After graduation from K State, I was lucky enough to be able to stay here in Manhattan. I went to work for a local savings and loan at the time, Home Federal Savings and Loan. I worked there for 9 years where I made home loans all over the city as well as in Wamego. At that time, when we made loans, we also did the appraisals of the homes. So things have changed a little bit there over the years. So, in that capacity, I had a lot of experience with the development of several areas of the city, starting in Northview, the Dix Addition, Valleywood, working around to Candlewood, uh, University Heights, all those areas. Had a lot of experience with the early years of those developments. So, later when we talk about workforce housing, had lots of experience with workforce housing back in those years. Uh, After that, I spent 10 years as a residential and commercial real estate appraiser. 6 of those, I had my own business. But during that time, I also spent 4 years as a commercial loan officer with what was Union National Bank and became Commerce Bank. So uh, lots of experience with lending, both residential and commercial lending. In 1999, I had the opportunity to go to work for the K State Foundation as their real estate manager. And in that capacity, my primary responsibility is work with donors that were giving us real estate, whether that was farms around the state or houses anywhere in the country. I also worked with campus projects that were funded by donated dollars. I was kind of the liaison between the foundation and the university, making sure those monies that were given for the projects got spent correctly. Uh, I worked for the foundation for 24 years. Uh, just retired 2 years ago. Also, in that capacity at the foundation, over the last 10 years or so, I was on the real estate team that developed 270,000 square feet of office space along Kimball and North Manhattan. Of course, in that capacity, I worked a lot with the city on platting and various issues with that. So, uh, lots of experience in that capacity in commercial development on the north side of town. Just some other things. I've been married to Marilyn, a retired Anthony Middle School teacher for 47 years. She taught eighth grade there at Anthony. We have two children, a daughter that lives here in town with her husband and two little boys. We have a son that lives in Austin, Texas, with his wife and two little girls. So that's always fun. Uh, Marilyn and I were actively involved in the rental business here in town for 45 years. We've owned many properties over the years that we rented primarily to students. So I've had lots of experience with that. But along with retiring from foundation, I retired from the rental business a couple of years as well. So that business has changed a lot, and I didn't change with it very well. So it was time to get out. I've been involved in the community and in various capacities during that 45 years or so. Early on, I was in the member of the Chamber of Commerce, did a lot with them. Graduated from the leadership Manhattan class of 1985, a few years ago. Been a member of the Manhattan Optimist Club for 44 years. Been a member of the United Methodist Church downtown for 40 plus years. Been on the Sunset Zoo Trust Foundation for since 2006. So lots of other things. Involved with scouting with my son, of course, all the PTO groups with both kids over the years. So, been involved in a lot of different activities around town over the years. So, that's about me. Why am I running? First of all, I did retire and I have the time now, I have the concern. There are some issues the city is facing. I guess the number one issue I'm concerned with is the rise of the mill levy. Uh, Over the years, we've always relied on the tax base to grow sufficiently to meet the growth of the budget so that we didn't have to raise the mill levy or the rate of taxation. We've seen that increase the last couple of years. About 11% just in 2 years, and that's very concerning. So I want to see what I can do to get that mill levy down. I've also seen here in the last year this big concern about workforce housing. As I say, I've been in the housing business here in town for 50 years in one way or the other, whether that was lending or renting in it. We've always needed housing. We're a growing community. We supposedly had a study that said we need housing, and I'm sure it said we did. But in my opinion, we don't need to. We have a sales tax that was passed a few years ago that offers grants to developers to build. That ought to be sufficient. We don't need to be giving out tax abatements for these projects, and I'll get into that later. Another concern is streets, getting those repaired and replaced. I hear an awful lot about that, and we have a sales tax that was passed for that purpose, and I want to see it continue. and see these streets continue to get repaired and replaced where needed. So uh, just touch on the aquatic center. I know that's an issue. I think in its present form, where they're proposing a $60 million facility with paid for by either a 15 mil increase or a 3/4 cent sales tax, it's never going to fly. Until they come up with a plan that is more basic and that is funded with donated money. I worked in a world where projects were paid for with philanthropy, and I think that could be done in this case. It has been done in other city projects. The Light and Art Facility, certainly, the Wareham, the Discovery Center, although it was paid in other way, it's being funded now in large part by philanthropy. Um, so that's an issue that's going to have to be dealt with. And then finally, the whole Aggieville area, as everybody's aware, that's kind of a challenge, and we're in a phase right now where there's a lot of construction going on, lots of improvements. There's going to be a lot of expense involved, and lots of decisions to be made about future development in Aggieville. So that would be my final issue to bring up. So
Okay,
with
great.
that,
Sounds like a very strong background in a lot of the areas where the cities have challenges, which is that workforce housing and development. Plus, we were with K State for a while, who, of course, is like one of our kind of our pillars of economic development here in town. And for full disclosure, I served with Larry on the Zoo Trust Board there. Larry was actually the treasurer for a number of years. He's not today, but
yeah.
was there for many years as a treasurer. So we'll get, I like the idea of keeping the mill levy or getting the mill levy down. That's close to my heart uh, here.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll actually start off in that neck of the woods. So, what is your budget philosophy? You kind of already said it, really, but will you vote to increase property tax mill levy above the inflation rate? Do you support the idea of the revenue neutral rate? Maybe just expand a little more on that. How do you approach the budget? I think you'll say you approach it from wanting to keep it, not
So
raise the bill rate.
So when we look at expenses paid from sales tax, we are limited by whatever that sales tax will bring in. So that's a fixed thing. We can't raise it. In my opinion, on the mill levy, on the general fund, the mill levy has always bounced around roughly 48 mills to 52 mills over the last 10 years, generally under that 50 mil mark. As I said earlier, we've always relied on the tax base to grow sufficiently each year to cover the natural increase in budget due to inflation. We hope the tax base grows at a similar rate so that we don't have to raise the mill levy or the rate at which we're taxed. So my philosophy is to get that mill levy back down to around 50. There, we've passed sales taxes to help with our debt. We've passed sales taxes to help with economic development. We're bringing in a lot of money from sales tax. And I think some of our general budget expenditures, particularly like for our social service agencies, could be shifted to some of those sales tax dollars and out from under the real estate tax paying category of income. So I guess in a nutshell, I'd want to see the mill levy more at around the 50 mil level, and look at sales tax. Our sales taxes are growing. Despite what they say about the population not growing within the city, it is certainly growing outside of the city, and those people are coming here to shop, which means our sales tax income is growing, and we need to look to that for some of our financial solutions.
Okay, yeah, it is. It is like um, Potawatomi and Gary are growing, but Riley isn't growing right
Yeah.
now, as far as the counties go. Kind of going back, uh, kind of staying on this track here on the budget and taxes. You talk sales tax, property tax. The city is funded mostly by sales tax. And then 57% of the property tax goes to RCPD. Uh, One of the things I've floated here recently is to try to get very specific with the property tax on what it's really being used for.
Mhm.
I know you've been at meetings. I've been harping at the fact that I really thought the budget presentation this year was disingenuous because they were blaming the police department when the police department's budget increase was actually going up lower from a city allocation, from total in city allocation, then the city budget was going up. So you can't blame the police department when you're taking property taxes up higher than
Right.
what their budget is doing.
Right.
Now, why that happens is they shifted how they were funding the police department away from these variety of other mechanisms to property tax and then blaming that property tax increase on the police department where no, that was your choice, city, to do that, and
Right.
city commissioners for voting for that.
Right.
But what I floated that I want to get your opinion of is instead of having this miscellaneous hodgepodge of items that are by property tax, is to really make it specific to things like you have to do the police department. In fact, by statute, it should be 100% property tax, but it's not. So really, the city is violating state statute. And people will say, how can the city get away with that? Because there's when the statute is written, it didn't have a penalty necessarily, and unless someone sues the city to follow it, they don't do it. But if you were to do that, and that doesn't mean you have to increase property taxes, and then say use property tax for police department, fire department, library, and and if there's any money left over that's not taking up property tax, maybe something else. But then people would really be able to understand what's my property tax pay for. And if
Right.
you could tell them those three things, library, um, police, fire, I think it would be very specific. And lots of times I think it would avoid some arguments because if you buy off on, we've got an issue in the police department or issue in the fire department or library, or whatever, that's the reasoning versus shifting money or um, you know not really knowing what it is. So what's your reaction to that
I
proposal?
agree. I think so there are there are 8 line items here that go into that to our mill levy. That's the general operating budget, which should cover just
And
uh,
that can change all sorts of ways from year to year and what they put in there.
it can, but I mean, the general operating budget ought to just cover the basic services of the fire protection, our parks and rec, our community development department, uh, those sorts of things.
Yeah,
Then
see,
you got,
today only a portion of that's going in and another portion is sales tax. That's why it's so goofy because you
yeah,
don't have dedicated things.
and then you got a couple of line items here for the fire department. You got a couple for the library, and then you got the police RCPD line item, and it does make it a lot clearer to be able to look at those 4 lines or 8 line items to see what's happening. And I think as far as the general budget, it could be made much clearer what all is included in that. I mean, they throw in all of these different expenses when they're doing the budget, and it makes it very confusing. And I think it can be made a lot simpler.
Yeah. Yeah. Because what happens with that is while you see those line items, that isn't 100% of the cost for those functions.
Right.
And so that's where it becomes what I call goofy because what they go up or down isn't necessarily directly related to those departments going up or down. So that's why I was throwing out just limit it to a few, but make them 100%. and you get rid of the, to
Right.
me, the gamesmanship that goes on.
So people can understand what we're paying for with our real estate taxes.
Yeah. So again, down that same track, the library fund, which the library board has the power to levy up to 6 mills. It doesn't include the benefit fund. Um, but the key to me on that is that it's not managed by the city manager. It's totally independent. Simply the library director and the board that decides that, and then go up to 6 mills. Often you'll hear a commissioner say, "Well, what can we do? That's out of our control." That's not technically true because that's set by what's called a charter ordinance, which takes 4 commissioners to do, which
Mm-hmm.
means they chartered out of state regulations to set it up the way they did. If you pass another charter ordinance, which is 4 votes, you could turn it over for city to administer and put it under the control of the city manager, like all the other departments, which in my view would provide more scrutiny and put it more in line with what the rest of the city departments are doing. I almost had enough votes to do it the first time I was on the commission. I couldn't get that 4th vote. What's your view on that? Should it be under the city manager or kept independent
I
like it
think it
is?
should be under the city manager. I mean, it is a city service. It, uh, just like so many other things. I'm not sure why it is separate. That happened a long time ago.
I
Um,
think I
but
think you would hear from the others they want it separate because they're afraid that the city manager will be too. I think they like the fact that some people like the fact that it's separate and they can set their own budget, but just
but
my
do they
opinion.
really set their own budget, or I mean, I mean, the city commission ultimately decides. I mean, they elected to raise it, the mill levy for the library just a little bit. They didn't have to do that.
Yeah,
So it is within the commission's purview to set those rates.
you're exactly right. A lot of commissioners say we don't have control. They really do have it, although it takes 4 votes.
I mean, the
To,
library is a city property, is it not?
yep.
So,
So, okay. Going on. Come on. I know Ed's been goosing the crowd out there. Let's go and get some questions from the group out. You already mentioned it a little bit, the workforce housing. You don't seem to be too enamored with the initiatives going on. Uh, so you kind of explained it already, which I think your view is, except for that sales tax housing fund, that you don't want to do anything else. When I ran the second time and the third time, 2021 and 23, I did make it a point to say that I was going to be aggressive on workforce housing and saw it as an economic development. Well, to, we do have a question out there now.
Do you want me to put
The
the
well, oh,
question up?
yeah. Why don't we go ahead and I can come back to that other thing. Gary, I assume he's talking about that new building.
Let me
okay.
read it out just in
So is
case
this,
anyone's just listening and not watching. So the question from Gary Olds is: if you get to this topic, do the business leasing office space, or do the businesses leasing office space on Kimball and North MHK, the KSU Foundation properties, do they pay property tax at the same mill as everyone else? That's a good question.
uh, so yes, in a nutshell, I mean, it is the same mill. So I'll just address those buildings out there. So on Kimball, there are 3 office buildings. 1800 Kimball is where the foundation is headquartered. That building is tax exempt because it is fully occupied by the foundation and they are part of the university, and by state regulation, they're tax exempt. The other two are not, they are fully taxed. And in fact, last year, those two buildings combined paid $886,000 of real estate taxes. So they are taxed. Any other the properties the foundation owns along North Manhattan, closer to campus, that are residential nature, those pay taxes. The vacant lot across from the Alumni Center that is currently for sale, that is fully taxed at whatever the county has it valued at. So anything the foundation owns that is held as an investment is fully taxed, just like any other property.
Okay, and I'll do a follow-up to make sure that we got the facts straight, because I thought the building that they built that's got St. Gordon in it has an abatement on it.
I
So,
I don't remember what, there might be a little bit of abatement on it. It was not 10 years. I remember it, city commission at the time cutting it back to maybe 5 years, but even that gradually disappeared as the building was occupied.
so like
Uh,
I said, I'll do a follow-up and put it out what that is, because my recollection was that I think that's still under abatement, because I remember I voted on that one.
mhm.
And the it's interesting because the speech we got from the foundation, because they showed us the whole plans for the Edge District, which they
Mhm.
plan more restaurants down there, condominiums, hotels, everything down in the future. And part of the sales pitch was you're going to get all that tax money when all that goes in.
Right,
So this is going to jumpstart that,
right.
and that's what they were asking for the abatement. And I think they'll actually be bringing a proposal probably early next year to the commission on that development. And my understanding is they're going to be asking for a lot of incentives.
Uh,
Uh, I mean, again, this is speculation because it hasn't happened yet,
right.
but that there'll be a lot of requests for incentives and probably star bonds, and the key is going to be how you set that district, because I think they're going to want a tax increment finance district,
Right.
and and how big that is I think going to be a big part of the debate. But we're getting to some speculation there. But I will go double check that and post it on our
Yeah.
Manhattan later on what the exact situation
Well, I know
is.
those taxes I told you. I looked them up on the county, as to exactly what they paid, and it was like 886,000. So,
Yeah. So the anyway, what I was I think we were talking about the workforce housing. And so what I was giving my perspective on it, and that was we do the incentives for companies to come to town. The argument was or is that one of our big impediments to getting new businesses is we don't have the workforce to work it. And one of the reasons we don't have the workforce is because we don't have the housing. And so that's why the workforce housing programs are set into place. And a lot of the tools that are there, like RHID, which in essence is an abatement program, for lack of a better term, just to simplify it.
right.
Uh, and and for rental properties, you can use industrial revenue bonds. There's a new acronym now that they use for them as well, which gives you about the same effect as using RHID. You basically give some sort of abatement, and you can do that with restrictions on the price for rentals. Uh, and if you do RHID, you can put restrictions on the price for the sale of the home.
Hmm.
Uh, and usually incentives are, they use the but for argument, but for the incentive, they wouldn't do it. This one is a little more complicated because it's but for um, the incentive, they wouldn't sell it in the lower price, being the workforce housing range. And there's a lot of other communities in Kansas that are using these tools. So the argument is for Manhattan to be competitive, for Manhattan to get that workforce, they need to use some of the same tools in order to get housing in that workforce range. Larry, go for it.
Well, we're never going to solve the whole workforce housing problem within the city limits of Manhattan. Um, and I guess my beef with all these incentives we're throwing at them is we don't consider how much we're giving the developers versus what they're going to end up with when the project is done. What's it going to be worth versus what's their cost going to be in it. As I pointed out the other night in front of you all for this latest development, these guys that are building these 40 units are going to end up with 18 units valued at about 5.7 million, and their net cost in them is going to be about 3.8 million. So, they're going to end up with almost $2 million of equity in those units, basically on the backs of the taxpayers through all these various incentives. And, it's fine if they can get state grants, or, we do have the workforce housing sales tax grant, but those upfront grants were nearly $4 million towards this project. So why do you need to go the next step and give them abatements that cost all of us? They're going to do the project. Whether they got that abatement or not, they were going to do the project. They had $4 million on the line without the abatements. So they weren't going to walk away from it if they didn't get their abatements. So I guess, sometimes there needs to be some negotiation with these guys on, where they're going to end up in the end. And they would have, we're going to have 22 buyers of those properties, and they're going to be paying the full boat for taxes. But those 18 units that are being rented, they're not going to have to pay tax. So is that fair to the others? Is that fair to other renters and other rental property owners in town? I don't think so.
So, okay. Just on that one, obviously I voted for that. And again, it was the idea behind it is, but for those incentives, you would not get the property at that price. And is there a profit margin if they're able to get them built for that price? What are their? It's always hard to tell what someone's cost is going to be. I know these guys have been on this project for a long time and have been paying bond counsel and spending a lot of money just through this process. But the other thing, and you're very right, is they may still go do this project even without the incentives. That's kind of the game that's played when you're there. You don't.
Well, I'm not saying without all of them. They were getting some of them. I say give them some of them, but
yeah,
I say stop at the abatements.
But the other thing I would just throw out about these particular properties is that Lee Mill Heights Village area. I mean, you almost couldn't give away that property, and it was having a really hard time finding anybody to do anything with that.
Yeah.
And the little kitten has been for decades. No one's wanted to do anything with that property. So I think the but for in this situation was but for a lower price to the consumer, and also a but for whether it would be developed or not, because we in the city have been finding anybody to develop that land, and we don't have much land left to develop.
So touching on the Lee Mill Village lots, we didn't just give them away. You paid them $260,000 to take them. You gave them a grant of $260,000 to take them. So
that's because
yeah,
I mean you couldn't get rid of them at a tax sale.
That's fine. I have no beef with that. On the other lots, those lots haven't sold because the people that own Stony Brook didn't want to sell them in the first place for the last 40 years. I was around when those were developed, and they were originally intended to be part of Stony Brook's development back then. They would have been duplexes in there as part of the retirement community, just like Metal Arc has duplexes. They would have had, but they made that business decision not to sell those lots and not to develop them. And it has nothing to do with their marketability, because they're very marketable.
So you're saying they really had people who wanted them and they just kept refusing?
Oh, I don't know if they had people that wanted them or not. I mean, they're good lots. There's nothing wrong with those lots. They're, gosh, on a great street, and the terrain is decent. There's certainly nothing wrong with those lots to build on. I don't know. I mean, I just assume that they Stony Brook, whoever owns that, owns those lots. They made the business decision not to sell them. So until here recently.
Yeah.
And
But anyway, that was the consideration that was taken into that is
and I do not agree that the value of those lots is going down, as was stated at the meeting.
well, there, I think he's going just by what the appraiser's doing, which we could have
He
a whole
made the
discussion.
comment that the value of those lots is going down. It's going to continue to go down, and I'm sorry, I don't agree.
Yeah. Well, you did appraisal, so it's there's been some discussions on how some of these county appraisals have been coming out.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother topic of how the county values land around in this town.
Yeah. So it's hard to argue, get too deep with that one.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is kind of a long question, but I think it's worthwhile here. The Parks Department has one of the Parks and Rec, one of the highest department budget. Department includes major facilities like pools, 3 rec centers, discovery centers, zoo, 30 parks, including 2 lakes. Should user fees be put into place to offset the cost of services? Cost recovery, which is made up of user fees, sponsorships, and naming rights, currently is about 25%. Best practices is 35 to 40. The city is gradually, it is a plan in place now, working towards best practices, hence the recreation center fees. So, one, do you support that? And two, which is a question that's often debated, should people who live outside the city limits pay a non-Manhattan resident rate for use of those facilities?
So, as I mentioned the other day, it's unfortunate that back when we were sold on the sales tax issue to build those, that they said they'd always be free. That was a huge mistake on the part of the city. So today, I mean, they've been built. We have them. We have to deal with the cost of them. And unfortunately, if somebody's got to pay the cost to operate them. And if we don't charge at least some fees, then the cost falls on the taxpayer to pay those fees. So I agree that we need to charge some level of fee for the use of them. I think the foundation that was created for the park to help provide funds to those who maybe can't afford the fees is a good thing to help those folks be able to use them. On the topic of charging folks outside the city, I think that's very good thing to look at. The citizens of the city did pay for them to begin with, so we've already got money in it. And why should those folks outside of the city not have to pay something extra? So, maybe we should have a fee structure of if you're a citizen of Manhattan, you have one lower fee. If you're from outside the community, you have a different fee that's higher. Another topic of on the fee structure, as I also said in a forum, that one of the unintended consequences of those facilities being attached to the middle schools was that they've kind of become a daycare facility for the middle school students from 3 to 5. Many of the kids, the parents send them over there after school, and then we'll pick you up at 5. So that creates a burden on the staff. It creates additional costs. So, there again, the fee that they charge is probably warranted.
Yeah. I've been a proponent of looking into that at a resident fee, but it has been kind of a sacred cow among many on the commission
Mm-hmm.
as far as that goes. Guess we have a comment from Gary Olds. Little Kitchen lots were 150 lot drop in valuation.
Yeah, the county valuation this year, I think, is like 150 per lot less than last year. So again, how they came up with that, I don't no comment.
Okay, on the aquatic center, I mean, originally I just had the two words, indoor aquatics, and was going to turn you loose, but you've already kind of commented on that. But let me a little different angle because talk more about the construction of it and the cost to build it. But the other thing is, it's a huge cost to run on a regular basis, on an annual basis. It and
Well,
uh, in the fees, the first pass the city did for this, the fees for it for an adult would be 540 a year, for senior military 430 a year, for a family 1730 a year, and for a couple 970 a year. And when I've told people those figures, they choke on them. And when I talk to the Parks and Rec director, he says, "Well, we can always adjust that if you want to increase taxes more." But this was the one that was put together that they thought was the reasonable thing given the cost to run them. So, how do you look at this whole indoor aquatics? I think you said you want to raise. I think it's a great idea to get philanthropy to raise the money, but what about the ongoing cost? Uh,
well, so the cost of operating the facility is a factor of what you have there to operate. As designed with a lazy river and climbing walls and all sorts of water park type features, naturally that is going to be a lot costlier. As we found out when we built the city pool downtown with all those lazy rivers and fancy features, it took more lifeguards to operate the facility. So, it took far more people just because of all those features. Uh, if you have just a basic facility that just has, competition lanes and a warm up pool, uh, and, that's it. Uh, that's got to be a lot cheaper to operate than needing a bunch of lifeguards for lazy rivers and other water park features. So,
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I think that one thing that they learned from the city park pool is that with those lifeguards, it all has to do with line of sight, and they have to be able to see everybody. And with that complex shape, it looks great architecturally and it's fun to go to. But like you said, they have to add a whole lot more lifeguards just because of the lines of sight are so complicated.
yeah. And I can tell you a lot of the people, at least my age, the retired folks who would maybe like an indoor pool, they don't want all that other stuff. They don't want lazy rivers and climbing walls and all that. So um, I just think you've got to get the structure itself to be a more basic kind of structure if you ever think we're going to get it done. And when it comes to raising money, uh, I know at the university, not only did we have to raise money for the facility itself, we had to raise additional money, 10%, sometimes 20% more to put into an endowment to cover major repairs to the facility and maintenance. So additional money could be raised to support operating the facility and to cover uh, major expenses, major repairs.
so, okay, doke. The moving on, um, social services and special alcohol funds. Now, of course, I, I've come under numerous scrutiny for actually suggesting we um, turn social services over to the foundation and use that money to do things like repair our streets. But I'm not going to ask you that. The what I am going to ask you is about is we have a committee that works on dividing up this money, and they tend to divide it up into a bunch of chunks, some as small as a few $1,000s
Right.
to give to a variety of groups. And one of the things we've talked about on the commission, although it never gotten traction, is that really the most efficient way to do that? Should we look at what are the top priorities? Like is it like homelessness, mental health, drug addiction, whatever, and then try to you know lump money according to those priorities into the organizations that give us the best bang for the buck versus the shotgun approach, which I think makes a lot of people feel good
Right.
because, you gave some group a couple of $1,000, but would it be better to kind of organize that money so you can, and this is just me, get more bang for the buck? So what's your reaction?
So I agree with you. I think we need to prioritize the services. Certainly, the homeless issue. Uh, they need that needs to be prioritized. The mental health issue. Um, but you're right. A lot of those just get a couple $1,000, and I mean, if they don't get it, what impact does that have on their operations? And I mean, we only have a limited amount of money to deal with, so we've got to spend it as prudently as we can.
So, okay. And the one thing I know that you've mentioned before in different forms and stuff too, actually, I'll tie this into, I'll say it, but then I'm going to go on to the next questions because I think you can tie it all together. Is you suggested for like social services and stuff using some of the transient guest tax money. But I'm going to wrap that question into the next one, and it's kind of long with a bunch of numbers, and I'm just going to kind of leave out the numbers and just say, what's your view on the amount of money that's going to the Chamber of Commerce between military relations, economic development, and CVB money? Which you're looking a couple $1 million that's going over there,
Right.
and I know I've argued for the past couple of years, particularly with that transient guest tax, that I mean, you look at garage maintenance, street repair, and all those. We've got all these people coming into town that are costing us money to fix and everything else. Can we use a little of that money for that? And the answer I got from the other commissioners was a flat no way type of thing. So, what's your for the whole TGT, the whole chamber funding mechanism, all that? What's your take on it?
Well, I'm probably not going to be politically correct here, but I think the whole allocation of that money needs to be looked at. I remember reading a report last year on the effectiveness of the um, efforts for economic development, and we've been spending a lot of money towards that effort through the chamber, and what have we gotten for it? Uh, I know the chamber isn't the only one out there doing economic development. Certainly, the as I've said, the foundation is a huge focus is on economic development. The entire university is an economic development driver. They're spending $200 million on improvements to the campus to bring more students to town, to bring more people to town. So, the chamber is not the only one out there doing economic development. So, should we be looking at using some of that tax money for areas where it's kind of really needed more desperately? Um,
So, okay. The You mentioned earlier streets, and I can tell you've been hearing a lot about streets. The 8 years that I'm on the commission is probably the one of the things I heard the most about um, out there. And we do have that sales tax that's there that'll be coming up for renewal. And the one thing that I've asked the city for, I don't know if I'll get it before I'm off. Maybe it's something you want to look at. Is we took that sales tax in. How much were we spending on streets from other things besides that sales tax? Um, Once that sales tax went into place, because you have a whole city department that works on streets repairs and maintenance, and what's happened with that. So, have we really net increased the amount of money we spend on streets
right.
given that sales tax, or did we just do some more shifting around type of thing? Because you know, if you get elected, you can guarantee reelection if you get the streets fixed.
Well, uh, that's probably never going to happen because all of our streets just they deteriorate. But we spend between the gasoline tax 1,650,000 and the special street maintenance 3.2 million. So that's $4,800,000 a year going to street repairs. I know it's expensive to replace streets. I I feel like one of the issues with that is, are there enough contractors out there to do all the work that's required? I don't know how much we're spending each year. I think there's been a couple of years there where maybe we took in more money than, we just didn't do that many projects. So do we need to be looking? I think this year or next year they're planning more projects to try to get more done. We've got the money. Let's get it done. But certainly you go into areas where the streets have been repaired. My own street out here, they did last year. I know, like Gary Avenue, you drive down that and it's in Candlewood and it's beautiful, nice and smooth. But then you drive to other streets in Candlewood and it's just really rugged. Or you drive up and down Hudson Avenue, where it's been replaced, it's nice. Where it hasn't been, it's terrible. So it feel like I'd like to be able to see us speed up this process of replacing these streets. With nearly $5 million a year, you ought to be able to see some results fairly fast. But I do think some money has probably been shifted from the general fund to these taxes, because clearly before this tax, streets were getting repaired. So where did that money come from?
We got a question. Susan Shipman says that she was recently in Hutchinson. She says that it's always been said Manhattan's too small for the YMCA. She went to Hutchinson and saw they have a YMCA there they're putting together there. They have a 15,000 population, much less than Manhattan. So she wonders why we don't have one here or push for one here.
I wonder that too. I don't know why. I mean, I had somebody early on tell me they were going to give me a name of somebody to talk to that thought maybe we might, have a chance of getting one here. But I mean, it seems like in conversations over the years had something to do with Fort Riley, and there was a facility in Junction, and the university had an aquatic or, a pool. There were just several factors that made Manhattan not be able to qualify. So,
things have changed maybe since the last time someone asked them. Now
we do need to look into that, because why can't we have one? Around Wichita, gosh, how many YMCA's does Wichita have? I know there's one in Andale and probably a couple in Wichita, and they're all around there. So I don't know why Manhattan doesn't qualify.
Along the same lines of asking other people to pitch in, I guess, a little bit, is Gary again says, has the city historically ever had a joint effort with a philanthropic organization for capital campaign on a new building project or expansion? For example, the Discovery Center, the zoo, parks and pools, etc. And then while we're with Gary, he's just wanted to also say that he added on the street repairs. Unfortunately, street replacement, for example, West Anderson Avenue, is often bonded, and that just increases debt. So,
well, as far as the street replacement, the bonding, I think right now everything's being paid for with money that's coming in from the sales tax. So I don't think that's being bonded, but I don't know for sure, but I don't think it is. But
I don't think so.
On the raising money for other city project, I can tell you most definitely the zoo raised $2.5 million here a few years ago for the Expedition Asia. As it was a project we started out, it was exhibits that were desperately needed. We started a fundraising effort. Then as as happened, we found out the city had a little extra tax money left over from the quality of life bond issue that they were able to throw in $2 million. But the Zoo Trust raised $2.5 million for that. That was a $4.5 million project, and it was a fantastic addition to the zoo. I can also tell you the Zoo Trust right now is in the second fundraising drive because the first one was so successful. We're now in a drive to raise $8 million for the next couple of phases of improvements to the zoo, namely the children's area. I forget the other couple of the monkey exhibits. Anyway, it would be another major improvement to the zoo, to the tune of $8 million that will be funded all with donated money. And we've so far I think we've raised quite a bit already. We've got lots of commitments, lots of folks out there. We're kind of in the early stages, but I think we're up to, I know, $1.5 million or so, maybe $2 million, in these early stages. So yes, I know down in the park, the skating rink several years ago, that was improved with donated money. I think maybe Dave Dreiling and some others were very generous on that facility. So money has been raised for other city projects.
Yeah, one thing interesting about the zoo, one of the restrictions on the zoo trust board is from the city is that you can improve, the city has to approve any improvements that the trust wants to do. But one of the restrictions they put on is whatever you do, you can't increase any operating costs on it. It has to be something that's an improvement that doesn't take any ongoing cost to run,
Right.
which obviously limits what the trust can do as far as expansion or anything like that.
One of our initial desires was to build a giraffe facility, and we went to the city to talk about it, and they said that would require all kinds of additional staff, and that just won't work. If you want to make improvements, it's got to be to things that don't require additional staff to run. So that's been our directive now for several years.
So, okay, Dope. Well, I think that's wrapping up a lot of the questions I had here. We are approaching the end of an hour mark, which we don't necessarily have an end point, but an hour is usually pretty good. So kind of doing a last call for folks out there. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask. So, well, we'll keep that open, but we'll turn it over to Larry to give some closing remarks and make some appeals of why you should check the box for Fox.
So as I said, I've been an optimist in Optimist Club for many years, and over the years, some of our members have always told me I should run for this or run for that, and they've always said you could have a sign that just says "Check the box for Fox." So that's always stuck with me, and I'm using that now. So I can't claim ownership of that. It's my Optimist member brethren, but I'm here to try to help the city however I can. I've had a lot of experience in my 52 years here in town, particularly with residential development, construction. I know the history of practically every development around, the perimeter of the city. As I said, these tax abatements are one of my issues that I just really don't like, and they're not needed. They're unfair to other developers that aren't getting them. The current tax abatements are only going to like 3 different developers at this time that have figured out how to work the system. So we have a lot of other incentives that we can use. The workforce housing sales tax grant is certainly a good one. I don't even mind the sales tax abatement that they get. I mean, that's reasonable, but you know, getting all those funds up front, these properties ought to be contributing to our tax base when they're done, and not 10 years from now. We have enough areas in town where the valuations have been frozen in these TIF districts. A couple of them downtown. A big one is Aggieville. There's 11 blocks there that has been frozen. It's in a TIF district as of 2019. The valuation's been frozen, so any development that occurs there, the increase in taxation goes to pay for the parking garage and the infrastructure. So it's not going to benefit us taxpayers in the form of any kind of tax relief until 2039. So with those abatements already in place, we've got to quit just willy-nilly giving them for every other residential project, to build 1-bedroom apartments or 3-bedroom houses. So I would appreciate your vote if you agree with all that, and if you don't, then there are others you can vote for. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Larry. Thanks for coming on, and thanks for running as well.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity to express my opinions.
And thank you, Ed, for our producer here, and take us off the air.
All right. Thanks, Ed.